Hi, I'm Dr. Melody Hilton, and I want to welcome you to my story. And today I want to introduce you to a very good friend of mine, Desiree Fox. And she's originally from Guyana. And I love this woman, and I love how she is impacting her world for good. But just like everyone else, she has her story. So, Desiree, I welcome you. I'm so glad you're here.
Thank you so much, Melody. I really appreciate this. It's an honor to be here. Thank you.
And I would love to hear your story. You know, some of the difficult times in your life, some of the areas where you felt powerless or devalued or upset over certain things that were acts of injustice that you had to process through.
Well, I go back to when I was 22 years old, and that sudden call came that my mom had passed. She had a brain aneurysm. And you know, at 22 years old, and I just had a small baby, she was really little then, and you're thinking, this is when you need your mother. And I really felt at first, I was just so hurt inside, I couldn't process anything. It was so painful. It was just like somebody just ripped my heart out. And, I kept looking forward for the time when, she would be able to hold the baby, see the baby and all this stuff, because at that time, my immigration papers were still being processed. So for my, at that time it was permanent residence before citizenship. So I was not able to travel until those papers came through. And what I was looking forward to is that, I can't wait for when they come through, and I'll take her home and see my mother, and I know how she is with children. And then all of a sudden, all of this hopes and everything that I had envisioned, her just hugging her, and, it just all disappeared. Just in an instant, it was gone. And so I felt like somebody robbed me. I felt like this shouldn't happen because she was just 52 years old. So I should not be in a position where I'm looking for a mother at this time, and I know you probably understand too, because when you're young like that and you just had a big kid, you are looking to the person that is going to be there for you, and that's your mother. And all of a sudden that was just snatched away. And, I got angry, I got sad, I got broken up. I would look and I would say, everybody else have their mother. Why don't I have mine? And so all those emotions would kind of run through your heart. And so you just felt like everything that you knew to be true, everything you expected, it's just like, it just crumbled away and it just fell off of you and you have nothing anymore. And so it took me a while to kind of process through this. This is now the reality of life. And every time I look at my daughter and I think, you're never going to feel my mother's arms. It was tough.
And it's still tough, isn't it?
It is.
Because people are irreplaceable.
It is.
And sometimes it's not something that people do to us, but it's the unfairness of life. Yeah. And I can relate. I lost my dad when I was 11.
Oh, my.
And so when we experience loss, it is very painful.
Yeah, it is.
And because people are irreplaceable, sometimes we always carry that loss and that disappointment. And that is an injustice that was not destined for a child.
No.
But we felt it. Yes.
Like I would hope, I would just really hope every day, that I'm there for my daughter. And I'm saying I never want her to feel what I'm feeling right now. And so I would always look at her, and I started to try to do, even in earlier 20s, I tried to start do things to keep myself healthy. I exercised, I ate better because I wanted to be there for my mother. Died of a brain aneurysm. She couldn't help that. It's, she had high blood pressure. She probably could have helped that a bit, but I knew her heart. I watched her with other people's children. She was always one that, we never know who mommy would bring home.
Aww.
She'd go to church and they'd say, this kid is in need, this person, and you'd see her coming with somebody in tow. And then, she'd say, get them a bath and your clothes would fit, give them, or your clothes would fit, and that's the type of person that she always has been. She's always helping others. And, we grew up with that. And so I couldn't imagine. I just saw my older brother, kids, how she would love on them. And I'm thinking, so I knew what my daughter would receive. And then all of a sudden, it wasn't there.
So that kind of shaped what type of mother you wanted to be.
Yeah, it certainly did.
And so you have recently told me some things that your children experienced, injustices and prejudice and different things. Could you share with me that part of your story?
Sure. The first part started with my son and my daughter, my older son and my daughter, and they were just like first grade and kindergarten. So they were in the community, in the neighborhood playing, and they came in the house and they were like, "Mommy, what are niggers?" And I'm like, "What? Are we niggers?" And I'm like, "What?" And they're telling me, it was predominantly a white community, and so they were playing with one of their little friends, and they said, we were going to go to their house, and she came out and said, "My dad says no niggers are allowed in here."
Oh my gosh.
It pained to see the pain on their faces, the confusion in their eyes. Like, what is this? It's the first time they'd heard about that. And so the confusion in their eyes and the pain in their little hearts, and guys, my husband's older cousin was there, and she started, because I immediately got angry, and she started to say, "Calm down," and she started comforting them and talking to them about who they are, and she was really great at imparting value, like who you are and all of this. And she says everybody is, they just don't understand that they are, and she's telling them all this stuff about and calming them down until they, and so you watch that sort of thing. And then I wanted to go to that parent, but I knew, in the anger that I was going to go, it doesn't make sense. I still want to be here for my children. I did not want to go to jail. And so I didn't bother, but what I didn't do is, when they were playing with those little kids outside again, I made sure that they never, I didn't tell them, but they knew better, but don't bring that up and don't treat anybody any differently. So those same kids were allowed in our house. They could play, they could eat, whatever, go out, whatever. But I just told them, don't go back over there. Don't go back over there. You never go where you're not wanted. And so we fast forward to the kids going to school, which I never experienced prejudice in school because in our country, I didn't have that in my school. There's I think there was more at that time an economic kind of prejudice, but there was not like a racial, because Guyana has 6 nations. So, we were all kind of, a whole bunch of them are in me anyway. But, we all kind of intermingled together. So I didn't experience that kind of, but when my children went to school, and I hear people talk about this, but never, and I could understand somebody not understanding it, because I did not understand it until I walked through it.
Yeah.
And
so good.
Yeah. And so, the kids, when my son comes home and he says, "Mom, they got me in a dummy class." I'm like, "What?" And he says, "I'm in a dummy class." So I called the counselor, can't get her. First day, second day, third day, I said, "Is she there?" And they said yes, and I got in my car and I went over. And now the school was just like a mile from where we lived, but the busing was taking place at that time, so they'd bus kids in from the city, which were primarily the black kids. So I go into the office and I ask for her, and the receptionist says, "Oh, I'm sorry you had to drive all this way." I'm like, "All this way what?" I drove about a mile. And she just looked at me. So the inference was, if you're black, you were bussed in, you came from the city, And so I said, "I'm here to see the counselor. Is she here?" She said, "Yes, but she's busy." I said, "Well, does she have another door that she can leave?" And they said, "No." I said, "Well, when she's done, you tell her I'm here." And I sat down. And in about 2-3 minutes, she came and got me. And I said, "I'd just like to know why my son is not in the gifted class, And she said, which is the honors program. And she says, "Well, you have to have A's and B's to be in there." And I said, "Well, are you his counselor?" And she said, "Yes." I said, "Do you know his grades? Go get it." And she came back with the file like this, and she's going, "Well, I don't know why he's not in there, but we don't have a lot of room and the class is full." I said, "Did you look at that before you fill the class?" "Well, these things happen, but it's not everybody that is got the A's and B's are able to get in, because and she's holding the folder looking at it, because we don't have the room." And so I said to her, "If you have this much room in the back somewhere, the side in there, tomorrow morning I'll have a desk and a chair in there. You put them in there." And she says, well, I have to talk to the principal. And he had just passed by looking at the door, looking through the door. And I said, well, there he is. Don't sit here with me. Go talk to him. So she came back and she says, well, I'm 90% sure I can get him there. I have to put it into the computer. I said, let's put it in now. She said, well, it's running and I'm 90. I said, listen, we're 90% and I've been here about 20 minutes. The other 10% is not going to take much longer. I'll wait with you. And she said, so she said, the computer is running. I said, are you going to go home and leave it running? She said, no. So I said, I'll wait with you. So she went back and she got his grades. But why do I have to fight for something that was a right? But this is the kicker. When she handed me the grades and the classes and everything, and I'm getting ready to leave, she says, by the way, don't tell anybody.
Oh.
It didn't hit me right then what don't tell anybody meant. Until I was almost home, I said, does she mean don't tell any of the other Black kids or parents? And so when he came back the next day, he says, there are no Black kids in there, which didn't surprise me. But this is what he said. Some of the teachers, he's been through things like, I know your mother wants you to come in here, but you're not going to be able to handle this, and you're going to fail at this. So when I got my part in getting him in, the next part was the breaking down of the child. And that happened more, I don't know if it happens today, but in our day, that happened more often than you think as you talk to other parents, which is a great injustice. This should not be.
Sure, exactly.
And then as I'm looking through, they did this more to the boys, the Black boys, than they would the Black girls. So it was quite interesting, But the thing of it is, the way I look at it is, this is what I want, this is what I'm entitled to, and this is what I'm going to get. And so I would never stop knocking the doors down until I got what I needed. But the key is that we can't go bombarding like we're ready to fight and we're ready to war, because it's not about that. If a system is failed and the system has been in place forever, you don't break the system down by warring. You break the system down by standing up for justice.
That's good.
Standing up for what you know is right. And because you know that you're entitled to this and you're not begging for it and you've earned it, then by golly, you're going to get it.
Yeah.
Because I'm not stopping until the answer is yes.
And one thing that's beautiful is you grew up in a nation where racial prejudice was pretty much non-existent.
But it is today.
In that nation.
It is today now.
Isn't that
Believe
something?
it or not, yeah. It is today. Once the, this is just my belief, it may be wrong, but once the oneness of the global influence, the oneness of the world starts to, because, television has influence. Globally. And so once that started,
So it really shows it's a faulty mindset.
It is. It really is.
And if we start embracing that mindset that
change.
One person is greater or more superior than another, it starts dividing people and dividing and hurting a nation.
Yeah, it does. It really does.
And so it's really important to fight in a good way, in a healthy way, injustice with doing what is right.
It is.
So let me ask you a question for you or your children or however you want to go. But let me ask you, were there individuals in your life or in your children's life that were the opposite of that saw their value, saw their worth, spoke into that, invested into them? Were there any individuals like that?
Yeah, there were. I'm going to tell you about her, but can I go back and just tell you one thing? Even when my children got older and they're driving now and they got driver's license. So my son was driving with his cousin one day. I just remember this, so I'm sorry if I'm messing up the whole thing.
No, this is good.
So he's driving with his cousin down this route that is famous for getting pulled over for speeding. And he's pointing to the odometer and he's telling him a story about when him and his white friend was driving and the cop pulled them over and gave his friend a ticket and they know they were not speeding, but his friend had to go to court and fight it. So he's pointing to the odometer and he's saying, you see, we're not even doing the mileage. And this is about where we were. And we were going here and we got pulled over. And then the lights went on. And he's explaining to him, they got pulled over. And he was just about to explain to him that when a black kid is in the car, they'll get pulled over. And so you got to be careful that you're not driving as fast. And they get pulled over and they get a ticket. So we're fighting this ticket. We never got the date for when the court was going to be. Apparently it was lost in the mail, but he finally got one that he's got a capias out because he did not appear for court. So we got this thing and we just rolled into the court wanting to see a judge, and we're talking to him and you know, he was very like condescending in the beginning, but you know, we were sticking to our rights. And then he finally calmed down and he sat down and he says, so tell me exactly what happened. And my son explained to him and all that. And he said, so you're not willing to just maybe pay a fine and let this go? He said, no, I didn't do it. And I'm not. So your children learn from what they see you do, you know, and that's key because we learn. So if we as parents, you know, get angry and we blow our top and we don't rightly fight for what we deserve, what we teach them is blow their top and do things that they should not be doing.
Right.
So when they watch you fight rightly and receive justice, they in turn do the same thing.
Because you can't bring justice through injustice.
No, you can't.
You can't stop oppression by being an oppressor.
No, you can't.
So when we become the opposite of that, then we're a voice, we're a message, we're a part of the solution.
Exactly.
And so we're not backing up and becoming passive and subservient to those things, but we're lifting our voice, but in a very healthy way.
Exactly. And we're feeling more accomplished, and there's a sense, you know, there's a sense of rightness, a sense of like, okay, you know, it's not that bad if I stand up for what's my right. But when I say stand up, it's not warring, it's standing up. These are the facts. This is what usually happens in this situation. I expect the same from me. And so we started to talk, and he said, no, I did not speed, and I'm not going to take that ticket. And you know what the judge said? He says, okay, we'll reschedule, and you come, and the policeman may not show up. He has a tendency of not showing up. You know, you find ways to fix things, right? And when he doesn't, it'll be dismissed. And that's what happened. And so the case was dismissed. But if you just took it and said, oh, this always happens to me, this always happened to my people always get, then you are, you're perpetuating the injustices, because you're becoming a part of it and sitting in even if you just accept it, you're becoming a part of it and sitting in the cesspool of this, and you're teaching your children to become a part of it and to sit in it. Rather than, let's just do this the way it's supposed to be done. Let's talk this out. We're mature adults here now. Let's discuss what's going on and how can we right it.
That's beautiful.
You know, and so that's what we did.
That's good wisdom right there. So talk to me about individuals who really saw your value.
Yes. My friend's mom, Esther Watson, I will never, she's gone home she's gone. She's gone on, but I will never forget that woman for as long as I live. She is my mother. Aww. You know, she's got a heart, my heart that will never let go. Her daughter had called me, my friend, and she called me and she says, my mom is going to start babysitting. Do you want to? And I said, oh my God, thank you. Because I was having a hard time finding good babysitters while I was working for my children. And so it was the 2 kids at that time. And so she started, and I mean, she raised those kids like they were her own grandchildren. She loved on them, and I was her daughter. And as a matter of fact, when, you know, we'd all be together, you know, at her home, at each other's homes, eating, cooking, the kids all call all of the, you know, all of us aunts and uncles, and they call her granny, and, you know, and we all call her mom. But if you were a stranger and you came, a lot of people thought that I was one of her daughters. That's how well she treated me. And so what I felt robbed of came back to me. And I'm going to tell you, we had moved away from the area, and we were in Delaware, and they were in Maryland. We moved to Delaware when I had my last son. And she did for me the same thing she does for every one of her children. When I have the baby, she got on a bus, We picked her up, came, spent a few days, and helped take care of me. She was the first person to give him a bath other than me. And I felt like it's being a restoration.
Yeah.
Like my son, he's getting a bath from a grandmother.
Aw.
That I felt they would never be able to have. Christmas time, she would buy all the gifts, just like for her grandkids. They would have the cards. She would take care of them. She would give you wisdom. What I needed in a mother, I found in her. She would sit there, the same wisdom she gave her daughters, she would give to me. We'd sit all there and she says, all of you, she'd correct you when you're wrong. She'd give you wisdom when you're right. And, she'd say, no, Desiree, that one was wrong. You should not have done. And I love that about her because there was an honesty.
Yeah.
There was not okay, I'm going to always be on your side because, I feel sorry for you. And she treated me fairly. She treated me like a mother would. I did not miss anything. When we all go to, and we're still close to kids. She's gone on, but all of her children, we're still close. We're still like sisters, and we'll call each other, and checking on each other. We'll visit. We used to, and even when the kids were small, we'd go at each other's house for the weekend. All of the kids, we'd get together, all the adults, and whoever these two girls are maybe in charge of, you're taking all the kids, you bathe them all, you get them dressed. These couple will cook, these few will clean up, and then we all sit down and we have fun, play games, whatever. But that's a family.
Yeah.
And I got a
So
family.
you don't
back in
have
her.
to be biological family
no.
to love and value
No.
and invest into somebody else.
No.
It changes the trajectory of our
sure
lives.
It sure did. And I just felt like, I felt like I was given back what I lost. I felt like I got back. I would call her and talk to her all the time. When she passed, that's like I lost my mother again.
Aw.
Yeah. But it was different then. I was more mature.
Yeah.
I was more prepared for life. You see, before, when my natural mother died, I was not prepared for life like I was when Mom Esther died. When she died, I was prepared better. And, I could understand that that's a cycle of life then. It was much better.
So let me ask you a question, because I know you and I know how you impact so many lives for good, and you truly are an instrument of justice, you and your kids. I mean, this woman has got some majorly successful kids. And so the price she paid really modeled so much before her children so that they are such beautiful influencers in society. But tell me how you now are an instrument of justice, how you are one that sees value in every type of person.
Amen. Well, the key is, even going back to when my children were little, my son, the youngest one, was going to a kindergarten that the Catholics had, and the orphanage was attached, like next door. And so in talking to the nuns, I found out that they have kids that are in the orphanage, and they would give them to families on the weekend. Whoever wanted to come and take a kid could take them for the weekend, and that way the kid get out of the orphanage for the weekend. It helped them not to have anybody to take care of too. But so going back to my mother always bringing kids home, it just seems natural for me to give. So I would get a kid or two like twice a month, and bring them to the house. And now the orphanage, I don't know if they had any black kids, but they were all white kids in there that they were there. But my thing is, the color of the kid didn't matter.
Yeah.
It was looking at this kid, the kid I felt like an orphan.
Yeah.
And I was a 22-year-old woman.
What a child.
What does a 5, a 6, a 7, an 8-year-old child know? How do they put this? How does this process in this tiny little head? All my heart had was love for them. And I'd bring them home. I remember, I'll tell you about one little boy, apparently they don't get a lot of food in the orphanage. And I know that for sure now because my next door neighbor grew up in that orphanage.
Aww.
And in talking to her about that, she said, I grew up there. And she started telling me about some of the horrible things that they endured as kids in the orphanage. The orphanage is now closed, but the things they endured there, and they would eat differently from their caretakers. Their food was different. And so then it triggered a memory, and it made me remember why this kid would be that way. When it was time to take him back Sunday night to the orphanage, they always don't want to go. And I pick them up Friday, and they come in kind of timid. And by Friday night, they're calling me mom, just like the other kids, And so I would bake homemade bread for my kids on the weekend. I bake different pastries and cakes and stuff for them. I wanted them to have things that they can have memories of childhood, And so I would cook and bake stuff for them. And I baked bread, and I saw him in the kitchen. He was stuffing bread in his pocket.
Oh, yeah.
And when he looked around and he saw me, he was like, I got caught. And I said, it's okay, honey. I would give you more. And so I wanted to put it in a bag. And he said, no. And he was finished. What made me understood why he wanted it in his pocket is she said some nights they're hungry. But if he went in with it in the bag, it would have been taken away. Mm-hmm. And some nights they're hungry. And so he was stuffing his pockets up with the bread. And it broke my heart, And so we take him, and whatever activities we did with the kids for the weekend, we would do with them. One little boy, we were driving, and he said, the red car passes. Wait, I think that's my mom. And then and he saw it wasn't. And then he says, my mom dropped me off in the red car. And it's like, oh my God. Imagine every red car he sees, he's going to be looking. Am I finally going to get to go home? I don't care how bad your home is as a child, how bad your parents are. Children want their parents.
Yeah.
Nobody could replace in their heart.
Yeah.
Even if you treat them bad, they want your love. They would do everything to get your love. And if you treat them good even more, they would miss you. So I don't know what are the circumstances for some of these kids ending up in the orphanage. I heard some stories about parents on drugs or didn't have the money and just dropped the kids off to give them a better life. It wasn't, but at least that was the perception. And, so we take them, wherever I took the kids, whether we were going to play putt-putt golf or, whatever we're going to do for the weekend, I would take them. So that's some of the ways I started back then with the children. Mm-hmm. And then even as we grow up, my kids always say, all our friends call you Mama Fox. And that's because they're important to me.
Yeah.
I look at them, and it doesn't matter their color. I tell you one story that was funny. Where all the kids were like in their teenage years, and we go to hibachi. There's about me and Guy and about 10 kids with us, they're like teenagers with us. And we're at hibachi to have dinner. And the guy is cooking it up and stuff. And he says, and he's hearing them calling me Mama Fox and Mom and stuff. And, and he's cooking them. He says, and they're, of course, all of them are different colors. There's Asians, there's white, there's, black, all of them are different colors. And he's saying, are all your one family? All of them, yes. And then he's cooking up, and he's puzzled. And they're snickering because they're laughing that he thinks that we might have been adopted or whatever, But, it's just, I saw life that way. And it was just my little piece of this huge world that, I could do something. Some of those kids and others that came along are grown adults, and some didn't have their parents nearby when they married and are giving birth. And I'm in the labor and delivery with them. Aww. And what a joy, to just be in there with them and just taking them home from the hospital. And, just any way in which you can make a difference in somebody's life. If we all just be a part. I'm not saying what did they call her? What's her name?
Mother Teresa?
Mother Teresa, yes. I just lost her there. I was going to say Saint Teresa. I don't care. I'm not Mother Teresa. I have plenty of my bad faults, but whatever good I could do in wherever I can do it that makes a difference, then I count it an honor.
And really, that's all we can do in our sphere of influence. Yeah. Value those in our sphere of influence. Yeah. Be willing to make investments because they will remember you just like you remember your mother, Esther, right? Yeah. They will remember Mama Fox. Yeah. You will shape how they parent, how they live, and how they can impact society. And so really, even the places of your pain, you became what you needed at that point. Yeah. Yeah. Thank you so much for sharing. It's a choice.
It's a choice.
It is a choice.
It is a choice.
And we can choose to respond in health, or we can respond as a victim, or we can respond as a wounded individual.
And if you choose the victim, and if you choose the wounded, you'll never feel the joy and the peace of being healed.
There you go.
It's a choice.
Thank you so much for
Thank
joining
you.
us on My Story.
Thank
love you so
you.
much
Love you
and
too.
love you.